Insurance fraud in the UK has hit epidemic levels. It's costing us over £1.3 billion every year. That's almost £3.6 million every day. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injuries, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing, and every year it's adding over £50 to your insurance bill. But insurers are fighting back, exposing 14 fake claims every hour. Armed with covert surveillance systems,
That's the subject out the vehicle.
sophisticated data analysis techniques, and a number of highly skilled police units, they're catching the criminals red-handed.
Just don't lie to us.
All those conmen, scammers and cheats on the fiddle are now caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Coming up, a pair of criminals go to shocking lengths to fraudulently claim over £100,000.
And they doctored medical letters to make it look like he had his optic nerve severed and would never get his sight back. In fact, his sight had recovered.
A potential scam is in danger of going down the drain.
Maybe if we try to open the shutter, it will be very hard.
And a fraudster gets caught with his trousers down.
Do you want me to get dressed?
It's unfortunate, but we can all fall sick or victim to an accident. Ill health or bad luck when it's least expected can put a strain on your finances. Although it's very unfortunate for the same family to be affected twice. Meet Jeremy and Sally Jones, who definitely seem to be down on their luck. But all wasn't lost, because as David Halstead explains, AIG was there at their time of need.
So the initial claim from Mr. and Mrs. Jones was in relation to a young relative who had fallen off their bicycle and sustained an injury.
This claim of £70,000 was paid out. With a lump sum in their back pocket, lo and behold, 2 years later, there was another accident.
The husband had been working on a car that had broken down, and she was bringing him out a cup of tea. And as she bent down to place that cup of tea on the floor, her head was adjacent to the exhaust pipe of the car, which then backfired right in the rear. She stated she had suffered a permanent loss of hearing within that one ear. Mrs. Jones would have been entitled to a payout of around £35,000.
Were the Joneses having a genuine run of bad luck? Or was there more to the second claim than meets the eye?
We deal with thousands of claims on an annual basis. These particular circumstances seem to be stretching credibility just a little bit too far.
With suspicions aroused, the insurer asked Mrs. Jones to go for a hearing test, and she gladly obliged.
When we received the results of that hearing test, it did confirm that she had suffered a permanent loss of hearing, and essentially there were no further tests that they could do. However, on examination of that document, we did identify that there potentially had been some forgery.
With the medical forms looking a bit dubious, AIG consulted the one person who could put their mind at ease.
Those inquiries with the medical examiner revealed that, in fact, this woman had deliberately and intentionally removed certain paragraphs from the report referencing her hearing loss.
Unsurprisingly, these inconsistencies led AIG to review the couple's claims history. And yes, you guessed it, all was not as it seemed. Was this a case of trying to keep up with the Joneses?
We immediately noticed that one document in particular had some signs of having been forged. There were some grammatical errors that we wouldn't have expected from a medical expert, and indeed there were some spelling mistakes within the letterhead itself.
With £70,000 having been paid out for the first claim, both cases were handed over to IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, an elite team of officers including DI Ollie Little. When they looked at the first claim concerning the young family member who fell off his bike, they were shocked by the lengths the fraudsters had gone to.
They doctored medical letters to make it look like he had his optic nerve severed and would never get his sight back. In fact, his sight had recovered. We went back to the doctors who were supposed to have signed off those injuries. Those consultants said that they had never signed those letters, and so the tale of lies began to unravel.
With such a serious injury to a member of their family, You could have been fooled into thinking that the insurance payout would have been put to good use.
Jeremy and Sally Jones didn't spend that £70,000 on the care of their young relative. They spent it on themselves, on household bills, on a high-spec car, and on gambling debts.
At Salisbury Crown Court, the couple's greed didn't go down well with the judge. They were both found guilty of fraud and forging medical documents, and both received 12 months behind bars.
They thought that a 2-year gap between those claims meant they wouldn't get subject to scrutiny. But the insurers will look to use patterns and profiling, all sorts of information, to make sure that if you carry out a series of frauds, that they'll be brought to justice.
And the insurer wasn't left out of pocket.
The fact that both of them were sentenced to custodial sentence was pleasing, but particularly gratifying was the fact that they had also been ordered to repay the money that they had illegally gained in the first place.
With £70,000 to pay back, I don't think they'll be putting in another claim anytime soon. Still to come, a claimant's hope of making a clean sweep is brought down in flames.
One policyholder had actually set up 3 of the 4 insurance policies that were taken out in the months leading up to the fire.
And one prisoner finds it hard keeping his nose clean.
The injuries did not look consistent with those of a fall from a top bunk.
With insurers homing in on fraudulent claims, the industry has new tricks up its sleeve to help combat the problem. People like Tara Shelton of ICOG, a former police officer with a degree in psychology. She's every scammer's worst nightmare.
From the very moment we pick up the phone, we are monitoring and assessing the claimant and what they say, but it's in a very gentle manner, very non-abrasive manner.
But it's also what a potential fraudster is not saying that can be the key. That's where Tara's expertise kicks in.
Well, one obvious trend that is presented to us is where customers answer a question with a question to buy themselves thinking time of how to respond. You may hear a claimant intentionally trying to change the topic, intentionally trying to sidestep from the discussion at hand, or some intentional misdirection on their part. So it is very much a conscious move during the phone call.
With the latest mobiles being costly to replace, it's no wonder so many of us have phone insurance. But when it comes to making a claim, insurers hear all manner of excuses, as Andy Morris from Assurant is all too familiar with.
So we received a claim for a brand new Samsung S5. We immediately sent out a new replacement to that customer, and everybody was delighted.
But not long after, Assurant received a call from the claimant's mobile phone company.
We were informed that the original phone that the claim had been successful on was actually being used to make telephone calls after the event and after the loss.
Had someone got their mitts on the lost phone? Or could it be that there was a phantom phone caller?
Once we were provided with this evidence, we immediately contacted the customer and informed them of this breaking news.
It wasn't long before the claimant was on the blower to the insurers to give her excuses. Sorry, I meant explanation.
So when was it you located the original handbag? When did I locate it? I think it was about 4 days ago, my love.
Bit of a stalling tactic there, I think, answering a question with a question and a mighty long pause. But this claimant had a perfectly reasonable explanation.
You say that handset is in the gutter? Yeah.
So just to clarify things, the phone's in the gutter, but somehow calls are still being made from it. Well, that's as clear as mud to me.
On that day, their daughter had dropped the phone into the gutter, and the phone had suffered quite substantial water damage.
A soggy smartphone was bad news for the claimant.
And what you would need to do would be to pay for the handset. Okay. You'd need to pay £325 for that. Right. It would either be that or send the original handset back to ourselves if you were able to retrieve that from the gutter.
That is, retrieve it from the gutter and stop making calls from it. Still not sure what to do, moments later the claimant was back on the phone again. Time for a bit of dirty work.
Now, if I get the phone out of the gutter, I'm stood there looking at it. It's really dirty and it's got wet.
Now remember, this is the dirty, wet phone that has mysteriously been making calls since it was reported lost.
It doesn't matter. It belongs to us. We'll sort it.
So is that clear? Nope, I didn't think so. Now it was time for her other half to get his hands dirty.
Her husband started to discuss with our agents the fact that he needed to go and find a plumber to be able to extract the phone from the gutter.
Maybe if we try to open the gutter, you know, it will be very hard. Because the original phone was found, that phone should have been returned to us. Listen, she has a damaged property because my daughter threw it in the gutter. Okay, so the phone that you originally lost, you're saying that phone's damaged? Yes.
Are you sure, mate? As you seemed a little hesitant there.
Okay, so that means that you do then have the phone then, sir, if you're saying that it's damaged. It's in the gutter.
Oh, so it's still in the gutter. Plumbing emergency over, the claimant retrieved the phone, and Assurance were surprised with what landed on their desk.
Our agents, of course, were expecting a very heavily water-damaged phone that had been in a gutter for 3 or 4 days. When we received the phone, it was in full working order.
Apparently a bit of an opportunist, it seemed this potential fraudster was thinking ahead.
One of the strange things about this case is the husband confirmed with our agents whether, if they return the phone to us, they will be able to claim again within the next month.
After that, if she lost her mobile after 1 month, can she claim or not?
Of course she could, and it seemed she'd plumbed to new depths, because guess what happened next?
Our agents were surprised to receive a phone call 5 to 6 weeks later for a new Samsung Galaxy. It appeared that this husband and wife team had suffered some unfortunate situation which meant that they had lost their phone again.
Unsurprisingly suspicious, it didn't take Assurant long to get to the bottom of the second claim.
Our agents quickly realised that the proof of ownership of that device was made up.
In addition to the odd bit of plumbing, it appeared this potential fraudster could turn their hand to anything.
Unfortunately, in this case, the artwork or the clip art was not one that anybody would be proud of. It was very clear that they had doctored and created a fake receipt.
This potential fraudster scam had well and truly gone down the drain. Many businesses rely on big, hefty machinery to help things run smoothly. If it breaks down, it can be costly enough, but if it's stolen, it's a completely different kettle of fish. When farmer Anthony Gribbin had some equipment nicked back in 2013, he didn't hesitate to put a claim in. But as John Beadle from RSA found, where there's muck, there's brass.
Mr. Gribbin ran a farm and some stables. He alleged that a forklift truck and a trailer had been stolen from his premises.
Coincidentally, the policy had only been taken out a short while before the equipment was stolen. Faced with a payout of up to £10,000, RSA looked at the claim a little closer.
We began to have some general suspicions around the authenticity of this claim. We looked into Mr. Gribbin and his business, and in actual fact, we came to the conclusion that these items were never actually stolen in the circumstances that he alleged.
RSA wasted no time in referring the case to IFED, also known as the City of London Police's Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department. IFED is made up of an elite group of officers who specialise in combating insurance fraud. DC Aman Taylor worked on the case and took a closer look at Gribbin's documents.
He provided the investigator with 2 things: a receipt for the purchase of the forklift and a business card from a company for the purchase of the trailer.
And who better to verify if the documents were legit than the people who supplied them?
They saw the documentation, examined it, and straight away within seconds could say, that's not our documentation, that's not our receipt, and highlighted on there a number of errors, basic errors, which highlighted the fact that it could never be their documents, such as their postal code was wrong, the phone number was wrong.
Suspicious that the documents were shoddy fakes, IFED decided to give Gribbin one of their unique home visits.
We're hoping to find any computer equipment that's capable of producing the suspected fraudulent invoices or any genuine documentation which we can use as evidence later once we get to the interview stage. This was my first live job on IFED, so it was a bit daunting for me as a new officer in the unit.
Aman's first raid wasn't going to be a simple door knock because Gribbin's farm covered several acres.
The property itself we believe to be large enough, a big enough property that it's going to take a few of us to secure the property. That's why we've got uniform attending to assist us with securing the property and securing a person once we arrive there.
As soon as they pull up, the search is on. Having got onto the estate, it's so large that Aman and the team do a quick recce to locate the main building.
We turned up, it was very early in the morning, almost pitch black, and my first thing was to try and find the front door. He's coming down apparently.
With the fraudster's front door quickly within reach, Aman and the team make their way to confront the suspect.
Hello, you Mr. Gribbin?
Yeah.
Brilliant, morning. My name's Alan Taylor from the City of London Police, but we have a warrant to search the premises.
But unsurprisingly, not everyone is pleased to see them.
You take your shoes off.
I can't really take these off. Sorry.
Oh, dearie me, I can't believe this. I've never had out like this in my bloody life.
And Gribbin is caught by surprise in more ways than one.
Do you want me to get dressed?
Because you are now under arrest, what I'll ask is that one of the uniform officer will stay with you just while you get dressed because you're under arrest.
Yeah, that's
all right.
fine. I'll go get dressed then.
When we do call at people's addresses that sort of time of the morning, quite often you will catch them in bed. You'll catch them unprepared for us, and in this case, undressed. So it's not uncommon for us to escort people. Some people in those set of circumstances may consider as a last-ditch attempt getting rid of information, getting rid of evidence.
Now fully clothed, Gribbin is giving his full cooperation.
Do you want me to go get you for you? Let me come with you.
Yeah, if you can show us where we're going. Is it within this house? Is
No,
it?
it's outside. There's nothing in this house.
All right, we'll come with you to the office and you can show us where the office is. So everything business related would be in this office, and that is your work computer.
Yeah, if you want to take the work computer, that's fine. Yeah, you'll just crack on and see what.
So far, we've located our subject, so we'll be looking at completing our search, seizing what we need to seize, and then taking him to Bradford for him to be interviewed.
Gribbin may be cooperating, but IFED never take a suspect's word for it and carry out a full search of the property. And it isn't long before they hit the jackpot.
That's the invoice. This is what we believe to be the fraudulent invoice that the company has said that isn't genuine. I'll put that down as 8002.
And evidence on Gribbin's computer could prove to be even more damning.
We'll take this, and then there's a possibility that we might even have a trace of him producing a document on Word.
A lot of evidence has already been bagged and tagged, but the team continue to go through everything with a fine-toothed comb.
What we can do with the phones is we can download the data from them. We can get any text message, phone calls, anything like that that's relevant from the phones themselves.
For the IFED team, it's already been a long day, yet dawn is only just breaking. With a full boot of evidence, this morning has been a success. Back at the station, Gribbin was interviewed, but when challenged about the evidence, the fraudster wouldn't budge.
He maintained the claim was genuine, he was a genuine victim of crime, and that the people that had supplied the statement to the police were lying.
Gribbin maintained his innocence all the way through the investigation. It wasn't until the start of the court case that he came clean.
We eventually changed his plea to guilty, sort of brought an end to the whole saga.
In February 2015 at Leeds Crown Court, Gribbin was given an 8-month suspended sentence and 200 hours community service.
As for my first IFED job, my first live IFED job, I was happy to see it all the way through. I was happy to get a result. I was happy that we'd eventually got to the bottom of the lies and he'd come clean and held his hands up, albeit so far down the line that we were ready to go to trial.
When a fire takes hold of your home, it can be devastating and traumatic, not just for you, but for your neighbours as well, as the flames spread and invade the surrounding properties. Simon Hammond from BLM dealt with a claim for a fire that started in a flat above a dry cleaners and spread through the entire building. But was this claim as clean as a whistle?
The claim which we received in this instance was from the tenant of a flat who had allegedly left one evening to go out, and subsequently which his flat had been destroyed by fire and he'd lost all of the contents inside.
The property was engulfed in flames, with the fire brigade attending the scene for around 7 hours.
This was an extremely dangerous situation. The property actually adjoined onto others, and the fire was of a very serious nature over 3 entire floors. It took them well into the early hours of the morning to actually declare that the fire was out and safe.
Now, a fire this big is going to cause a fair bit of damage, so you'd expect a sizable insurance claim to follow.
The initial claim that was for the flat contents, which were approximately £25,000. There was the other flat, and the tenant within that had also put forward a claim to what happened to be the same insurance company. And in addition, the owners of the building were claiming for the business interruption and the damage to the premises. All told, the total value of this claim for all of the insurers concerned was in excess of £500,000.
£500,000 is a serious chunk of change. But was this claimant trying to take the insurer to the cleaners?
When the initial claim came in, the claimant had alleged that the fire had actually commenced after he'd left the flat to go out with his friend.
When the claimant left the building, he said he couldn't see sight or sound of a fire. So it must have started on the floor above, but evidence told a different story.
This seemed inconsistent with the forensic reports, which seemed to suggest that the fire had actually started at the level where he had walked out of, so may have actually been aware of the fire at the time of leaving the flat.
Another crucial bit of evidence was about to throw cold water on the claimant's version of events, and that was the CCTV from the pub next door.
What this actually showed was that the policyholder had left for the evening from his flat. It then showed him walking back past the pub after he'd left his flat when he waved at the landlord through the window. And only a matter of minutes thereafter, a passerby came in alerting all of the customers in the pub to the fire, which he'd noticed coming through the roof of the property next door.
So our potential fraudster claimed he didn't see a dicky bird. Yet a few minutes later, someone's running into the pub saying that the building next door is engulfed in flames.
This proved that ultimately, if the fire had started on the first floor where he left his flat, then ultimately he would have been aware of it at the time of leaving.
This wasn't the only smoking gun. The claimant had said he barely knew the other tenant and the shop owner, but their phone records showed otherwise.
The volume of texting between the individuals may not seem completely unusual, but taken in the context that they had only a very passing relationship and met a couple of months beforehand, seemed to indicate that all was not what it was being told.
Then the insurer's investigation added even more fuel to the fire.
We established that the one policyholder had actually set up 3 of the 4 insurance policies that were taken out in the months leading up to the fire. That was for his own contents, for the business downstairs, and for the freeholder.
So the policyholder had actually set up insurance policies for the other 2. That was very helpful of him. The claimant didn't want to come clean. Even when faced with all this evidence, he took the insurer to court. But his actions didn't pull any weight with the judge.
He found that the policyholder's actual shock, or alleged shock, of discovering the fire, when told, was as a direct result of him, in the judge's words, being able to pull the wool over others' eyes. And the judge found he'd given inaccurate and unclear evidence throughout the life of the claim and also at trial.
The judge dismissed the case, but this potential fraudster was all fired up and appealed. Rejected again, it left the claimant well and truly out of pocket.
The insurers in this instance did believe that there was some form of deliberate act in relation to setting this fire. They pleaded to that effect, and although it was never actually found, that was their initial concerns. The policyholder therefore walked away with nothing and is now facing a bill of approximately £80,000 for taking the matter through to court.
A bill like that would certainly burn a hole in his pocket. With over 85,000 inmates detained at Her Majesty's pleasure in prisons up and down the country, the occasional accident is inevitable. A stint in jail is the ideal time for a criminal to reflect on their misdemeanours. But with so much time on their side, some prisoners come up with what they think is the perfect con. Anthony Evans was doing a 6-year stretch for robbery, but he was about to have one of those days when you just seem to get out on the wrong side of bed.
Mr. Evans stated that he'd fallen from his top bunk due to the lack of a safety rail.
Ouch! Now, the top bunk is about 4 feet off the ground, so a fall from that kind of height onto a hard prison floor could do a bit of damage.
Mr. Evans' solicitors stated in their letter of claim that he'd suffered a 2-inch laceration to the back of his head that had caused a permanent scar, that he suffered with headaches for approximately a week after the incident, and that he had pain to the right-hand side of his body.
On the face of it, the claim seemed legit, but then they got their hands on the prisoner's medical records.
There was information that came to light within those that changed the way that we would treat this claim. Both the nurse and the GP had commented within the medical documentation that the injuries did not look consistent with those of a fall from a top bunk.
Could Mr. Evans possibly have been up to no good?
They commented that it looked like the injuries had been caused by a razor blade. They were extremely clear, precise and straight-edged.
To the prison, it was clear Evans was trying it on.
When we got the medical information, we decided that it was time to refer the matter to Greater Manchester Police.
While the investigation was being carried out, Evans was moved to another prison, where he made a confession.
While at his new prison, he had a conversation with a prison officer during which he admitted that he'd asked his cellmate to cut the back of his head in order that he could put in this fraudulent claim.
Now, I've heard of close shaves, but that takes the biscuit.
At the point that Mr. Evans had actually admitted to the officer, he didn't have any idea that he was being investigated by Greater Manchester Police. I just think that perhaps he wanted to clear his conscience.
HMP Manchester took it one step further, as they decided to clip this jailbird's wings.
The CPS decided to prosecute Mr. Evans. It then went to Magistrates Court where he pled guilty. The magistrates then referred it to Crown Court as the matter was too serious for them to deal with for sentencing.
By chancing his arm to get a potential payout, Evans got another 6 months inside for fraud. It just goes to show that crime doesn't pay.
I think that Mr. Evans did plan this quite well. He'd obviously found someone who was willing to inflict a wound on the back of his head, and then he was prepared to lie to staff and claim that he'd fallen from his top bunk.
Evans learnt the hard way that when it comes to fraudulent claims, HMP Manchester takes no prisoners.
If we do catch you, we will prosecute you, and you will end up serving longer time than you ultimately did before.